So let's take a look at how we can configure this in K6. I have here my load test, and this is already a good starting point. So I'm going to go ahead, duplicate it, and rename it in spike test. All right, let's go ahead and show only this test on the screen. Now, the way a spike test works is different from anything that we did before in K6. And this is because these stages, they work a bit different now. Now, the idea is we have a sudden increase in the number of users, and this is happening very fast. So for example, let's say that we typically handle like 100 users, and then all of a sudden have like 1,000 or 10,000 users, right? So this happens in a matter of seconds. For example, this can happen in like 1 minute or 2 minutes, for example. So we go from essentially nothing, in this case, we go from zero in a very short amount of time, 2 minutes, we're going to 10,000 users. And then we're not really staying there. So we don't have this, let's say, in-between stage where these users are, doing something on the website. They come all of a sudden, they're trying to use the application, they hear about it in a commercial, they just grab their phones and then hit the application. And then what typically happens is that they are away. So we can say that from this value, in like 1 minute, it will go back to zero. So essentially, we are at almost zero or zero. In 2 minutes, we are going somewhere very, very high, and then boom, we're coming down again. This is the idea of this test. So in this case, we only have these 2 stages. Of course, you can configure additional stages, simulating, let's say, the regular traffic, and then spiking from that regular traffic to a higher value. But this is a simplistic version of a spike test. Now, I mentioned earlier is that it's possible that these people do not gonna go through all the pages that typically users see. So in this situation, it does make sense, for example, to only have one website, right? So we're gonna only call one address, and most people, where do they go? They go to the start page. Now, I'm not gonna run this test because I have a very high number here, and I don't want to put so much stress on this K6 test website. But you get the idea. The way we're configuring this test right now is different from anything we've done before. So just to understand exactly what we're doing here, there's like this TV commercial or whatever is happening. It's driving all this incredible number of users to our application. And then, once that show is over or once that TV ad is over, they will also see this decrease in the number of users because, who has been watching has instantly went to this. And once it's over, people who are tuning in a bit later, they don't even know that there was an ad for our company. So they will not be coming back. We're going to go back to the normal traffic that we're getting. So in this case, the ramp up stage is very steep and the ramp down stage is also very steep. And what we're doing here is if we have, for example, like an e-commerce application, most users will open the main page, but very few will go to individual products or check something like that. So this is something where the scenario itself needs to be changed. So maybe, of course, with traditional scripting, we can decide only 5% of the people who actually visit the website will actually go and see a product. And only from that, another fraction will end up buying something. So this can be coded into the scenario in the default functions to account for this behavior. Now, what we'll notice is that some parts of the system will be up to the task, while others, of course, will encounter various issues during a stress test. And we even expect the application itself to fail. Now, how can we define a realistic value for the spike number? Well, it's again very hard to tell because it can vary dramatically. But I would say take whatever you have in terms of your stress test and make it 4 times that, and maybe even more. So play around with different values, but I would say 4 times what you have for the stress test is a good starting point for such a spike test. So as I said earlier, because the load is so high and so sudden and so unexpected for the system, we kind of like expect the system to crash, right? So this is something that should not surprise us. But it's also important to understand like what is happening afterwards. So after the system crashes or some parts of the system crash, can it automatically recover after a while? Or is there a need for manual intervention? Do the engineers need to go there and open terminals and do crazy stuff to put this application back online? That would be something important to know. So in conclusion, running a spike test is by no means a normal occurrence. We don't do this every time we deploy a new version of the application or something like that. So it's kind of like when you expect that something will happen, or from time to time, it doesn't hurt to just test it out to see how the systems will perform if something like this happens. Then K6 can definitely help with this as well. It, of course, makes more sense if you know that your organization is going to run an ad or something is expected and the number of users is expected to increase so much. Otherwise, running such a test maybe makes less sense for the average application, which doesn't get so much news coverage and where such an event is really highly unlikely.